to part 2 of section 1-3, the characteristics of life. So continuing on where we left off, characteristic of life number 6 is going to be based on the genetic code. So the genetic code has to do with DNA. Offspring usually resemble their parents, and the reason is because they're getting specific traits from their parents passed down to them. DNA, once again, is what carries all the directions for inheritance. And in a couple of months, we will be spending a lot of time learning about genetics and DNA. The DNA code determines the inherited traits of every living organism on Earth. So once again, a characteristic of living things is that they have DNA. Number 7 is adaptation. Adaptations are traits that give an organism an advantage in their particular environment. So it allows them then to succeed as far as life goes. So some examples of some adaptation might be camouflage. It might be their size. Those would be things that, it might be their speed. It might be their eyesight. It might be their hearing that help them evade or elude predators in their environment. So it gives an advantage for some members of a species in an ever-changing environment. So, which animal is better adapted for their environment? Would it be this bunny or this bunny? And of course, by looking at it, you can determine that this bunny is going to be better adapted for its environment because it blends into its surroundings and then it can avoid any predators that may be present. So adaptation would be number 7. Number 8, response to the environment. Organisms detect and respond to stimuli from their environment. So an example of a stimulus is a signal to which an organism responds. So, for example, and this goes back also to homeostasis. External changes, such as temperature or the amount of light, are going to cause an organism then to change or respond to that particular stimulus. An internal stimuli would be an example of glucose in your blood. So if you have low blood sugar, your body's going to respond differently. It's going to slow down if you have low blood sugar. It's going to make you very tired and lethargic. If you have high blood sugar, you're going to have lots of activity. You're going to be very jumpy or very jittery. So those are different things that can stimulate. And you know about the external changes, temperature or the amount of light. But the internal ones, sometimes you're not really that familiar with. So if we have a particular stimulus, an organism then might respond to that particular stimulus. And last but not least, number 9, all living things are made of cells. The definition of a cell is a highly organized, tiny structure with a thin covering called a membrane. And we're going to spend weeks on learning about the cell. Yes, it will be a review from what you did in 8th grade, but it is the key. All living things are made of cells, and it's very important that we learn about the cell and its structure and function. It is the smallest unit capable of all life functions. And here's the key. All life functions. Life. So it's the smallest unit capable of all life functions. There are things that are smaller. Compounds are smaller, molecules are smaller, atoms are smaller than the cell, but the cell is the smallest unit of living functions. Cells grow, respond to their surroundings, and they also reproduce. And there are two types of cells or cellular makeups that we think about: unicellular and uni. The prefix uni stands for single cell or one. If you think of a unicycle, it has one wheel to it. Examples of unicellular organisms are bacteria and algae. And multicellular, composed of many cells, so many, or multiple. And examples of multicellular organisms are going to be plants and animals. So this was the 9th characteristic of life. So in order to finish off our Fred H. Gark mnemonic, G stands for genetic code. So G stands for genetic code, and we have to remember that all organisms are made of DNA. A stands for adapt, and all things adapt to change. And some examples: structural might be wings or arms, physiological might be internal body processes, and behavioral might be innate. Those are what we're born with or what we have learned. R responds to stimuli. So that's our second R. Our first R was reproduce. And finally, C, living things are made up of cells. So those are the 9 characteristics of living things. F, food for metabolism. R, reproduce. E, evolve. D, develop. A, H, homeostasis. G, genetic code. A, adapt. R, respond to stimuli. And C, made of at least one cell. Biology then is divided into many different branches or different fields. So biology encompasses the study of all living things, and then we can get more specific. For example, zoologists study animals, botanists study plants, and paleontologists study ancient life. And these are just a few examples. It can go on and on and on as to different branches in biology. And finally, biology in everyday life. Sometimes we don't think that we use biology on a daily basis or we interact with biology on a daily basis. Biology helps you understand what affects the quality of your life. So biology involves your pets. They're living things that are a part of your life. Information about food. Food is living, and we have to eat that in order to survive. Conditions of good health, medicine, all of that is going to play a role in making sure that you maintain a healthy body. Diagnose and treat medical problems. And finally, identifies environmental factors. So biology also deals with the entire world around us, not just in our immediate homes, but it branches out to our communities and further on, eventually encompassing the entire biosphere. Biologists do not make decisions about most matters affecting human society. Citizens and governments do. So biologists really do a lot of the research and the background information, and then we send it off and we make our own decisions along with the government. That concludes podcast 1-3, and it's the end of the chapter that we're going to be studying.